Welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Eileen Harris. I'm the Executive Director for the Alabama Center for Dispute Resolution. We're so glad that you could join us. We're very excited about this topic. It's very timely, and we have three great presenters who are going to share some insights with you to help you in your legal practice to have a great online experience with mediation, as well as for your clients. So let me just tell you a little bit about our presenters. We're so lucky that we were approached by Beth McClellan, Boyd Miller, and Alan Schreiber to conduct this webinar. Beth McClellan has been practicing law for over 28 years, and she served as a mediator for 18 years. She has a litigation background in complex defense litigation, employment and business law, as well as family law, and she's represented individuals and businesses from the trial level through the appellate level. She's a co-founder and a managing partner with the law firm of McClellan & McClellan, where she provides mediation services in family law issues, employment law issues, and appellate cases. Boyd Miller has been practicing law with the firm of Cabanas, Johnson, Gardner, Dumas, and O'Neill for 41 years, and he's been providing mediation services for over 25 years. And he served at the trial and appellate level as a mediator in over 1,000 cases involving a variety of disputes, including personal injury claims, employment issues, and commercial disputes. Boyd formerly served as the chair of the Alabama State Bar Association's Dispute Resolution Section, and he is currently a member of the Alabama Supreme Court Commission on Dispute Resolution. Alan Schreiber has been practicing law for over 35 years. He has a unique perspective in that he spent almost equal time as the managing partner for both a plaintiff and in a defense firm. He is a fellow and past president of the College of Civil Trial Mediators, a fellow in the National Academy of Distinguished Neutrals, and a 20-year panelist for the American Arbitration Association's list of neutrals and mediators. Alan currently works as an arbitrator and mediator for Schreiber Dispute Resolution in Birmingham. So we're very grateful and fortunate to have these three experienced attorney mediators with us today. And as you saw in the invitation to the webinar, there are basically three areas that our panelists will be sharing with you today. Our goal is to help you understand the difference between in-person dispute resolution and online mediation, including the many benefits of online dispute resolution. We also hope that you'll understand how to properly prepare yourselves as attorneys and your clients to participate in online mediation. And throughout the discussion, our panelists are going to be sharing with you some tips and insights from their experience. COVID-19, this period during the pandemic, has pushed us into the use of online dispute resolution more readily. And so our panelists hope to share with you some insights to help you have a more productive and meaningful session when you participate on online dispute mediation. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to Ms. McClellan. Beth?
Hello, everybody. I am excited to have this opportunity to meet and handle part of this. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about the benefits that we all can have for our businesses and our clients with online mediation. I think everybody would agree that no matter what type of law you practice, mediation can be beneficial to you, your clients, and it's also beneficial to the bench. As far as online mediation goes, I will be absolutely honest with all of you and let you know that if somebody had asked me even less than a year ago to handle an online mediation, I probably would have hemmed and hawed and said, no, let's do it in person. Two reasons. One, I do like the personal aspect. I think that is very important. And two, I would not have had a clue how to do it. COVID obviously has changed a lot of the ways that we all in our practice handle business as usual. So for the topic of benefits of online dispute resolution, I'm going to go over three specific areas. First, the safety. Second, the cost. And third, the comfort and the convenience. As far as the safety goes, with COVID and any other reason that you might have a client that can't participate in in-person mediation, or if you yourself have a reason that it's helpful to be in a remote location, online mediation provides the ability for us to handle these matters in what, as we all can see through this webinar process and through using different online tools, that we are able to have as close to that personal conversation and personal experience as possible. So safety as far as health is important. Another issue with safety that we all find, and this is regardless of the type of case law that you practice, is the fact that all cases have a business aspect, all cases have an emotional aspect. Sometimes those emotional aspects can make safety a difficult thing in the mediation context. So the online mediation platforms give us the ability to have everybody in a place where they can feel safe. So those are two of the important things as far as safety in online mediation. Another thing that we all as attorneys love is cost savings. And the cost savings of online mediation applies not just to your cost, which can be your overhead if you're a small firm, but it also applies to the case cost. You don't have travel if you're the attorney representing the person. You don't have meals or overnight stays for people that may be necessary. And if you have clients that are out of state or from out of country even, those people can participate without the cost of traveling to the mediation location. So the cost in and of itself is also helpful to attorneys who want to use the online mediation process. Now, I'm sure in a little bit, Boyd and Alan will talk to you about cost savings regarding the different platforms. But for purposes of just kind of going over these benefits, that's where I'm going to leave the cost savings right now. Another really important benefit to online mediation is the comfort and the convenience. Many times our clients are uncomfortable going to a particular location. They're uncomfortable seeing the people on the other side. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. They can't wait to see the other person on the other side. So perhaps think about using that to your advantage as far as being online, is that nobody has to deal with the stuff that may occur. But I have found, surprising to me, honestly, that people are comfortable in their own location. And a lot of times that gives us the ability to mediate a case for attorneys, and it helps you as the attorney for your client to know that your client is comfortable. Also, it's convenient. You can mediate your cases whether you're in the office. I know you don't want to do it on vacation, but the flexibility that is available for online dispute resolution gives you the opportunity to look at alternative time schedules, alternative places. So all of those things, comfort, convenience, cost savings, and safety, are benefits of getting the process of online dispute resolution into your practice. Last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn it over to Boyd. As a practicing attorney, your judges that you practice in front of are always going to be happy to hear you say, especially with the backlog that exists now, they're going to be happy to hear you say, Judge, we've settled that case and we used mediation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Boyd, who is going to go over how online mediation is conducted.
Thanks, Beth. You know, I think if we took a poll of the participants at this session and asked them how many of you had participated in online mediation prior to January of this year, very few hands would go up. Mine would not go up. The closest I had come to participating in online mediation prior to this year was probably having somebody attend by conference call, as we all did from time to time. I think if you asked attendees, how many of you had used Zoom before January of this year, very few hands would go up. I, for one, can tell you I had never even heard of Zoom before January of this year. I had heard of online mediation, and I take an online periodical from mediate.com. It's a weekly. They send out a weekly periodical that has articles, blogs, and references, news of mediation. And I started picking up about a year ago articles on online mediation, and they had names like, here's one I wrote down: the future of mediation is online. And I remember looking at that and thinking, I don't think so. No. And then there was one, how an online mediation is conducted, which is my topic here. And I remember thinking, who cares? I'll pass on that. Well, suddenly we got COVID-19 came upon us, and everything is Zoom, 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 Zoom. And I find myself, like a lot of other people, rushing around trying to dig up every information I can about how to mediate online, including going back and locating these articles that I scoffed at just a few months earlier. Since early April, I've conducted a number of online mediations. Here's what I have found in terms of how I like to conduct them. I'm not suggesting that what I do is like everybody, but here's how I do it. First of all, once we agree on the date and time, my legal assistant will send out what I call an evite. It's nothing more than an invitation with a Zoom link. It's sent to the attorneys typically. The attorneys can then forward that on to clients or whoever. Sometimes the attorneys will ask us to forward it or send it directly to somebody, which we're happy to do. But by just simply clicking on the link at the appropriate time, we can get the mediation underway. As the mediator and the host of the session, I like to get there about 15 minutes early so I can see people as they come in. I try to avoid admitting anybody into the meeting who's not already, their attorney hadn't already logged in. I want the attorneys first. I don't want an awkward situation where I'm sitting there trying to fill space with a plaintiff or a defendant, or heaven forbid, both of them, without their attorneys present. So I want the attorneys in first, then I'll admit the participants, and at that point we can go on to a joint session. At that point, I'm looking at what's basically a Hollywood Squares a computer face. I like to have a joint session. I know a lot of mediators have gone away from that, but I think it's important that we have a joint session of some sort where I can talk about the mediation process, explain my role as the mediator, lay out the ground rules, and emphasize the importance of certain things such as confidentiality, which is very important in the context of online mediation, and also emphasize that there is no settlement until it has been agreed to and memorialized in a writing of sorts that's affirmed by the participants. I'll go into that more in just a few minutes. But it's important to me to have a joint session because I lay out those things, but also I think it's important that it establishes that the mediation is underway, and it establishes me as somebody who's basically running the mediation, so to speak. And I understand, particularly Beth, you may have in some of your family law situations where it's not appropriate to have everybody together. That's happened to me before, and I'm guided by what the attorneys tell me. But even if I don't have a joint session, I will meet with all of the participants separately with their attorneys and go over those ground rules and talk about those things so that everybody knows where we stand in mediation. One of the things I do like to talk about too is that mediation is an opportunity for self-determination. and it can be done in a confidential setting, in a private setting, unlike what happens at court. By self-determination, I talk with people about they can decide their case, and they can decide it in ways that the courts oftentimes cannot. If you take, for instance, a workers' comp case, in those cases, the courts have to follow very narrow statutory guidelines. But in mediation, while the Comp Act may be the framework for what we do, the parties are not bound to follow those specific statutory pathways. They can cut their own paths. So I like to talk with them about that and go ahead and get the mediation underway. Now, once we finish our joint session, and obviously I will open up the floor for the attorneys to speak if they want to, but once we finish our joint session, I can put people in breakout rooms. I can move people in and out of the meeting. If you put people in breakout rooms as a mediator, I want to have the control over who goes into the breakout room so that there's not, once again, an awkward situation where people who don't belong together are stuck in a breakout room together. I can then move between breakout rooms and talk with people. I can leave them there to talk privately amongst themselves. I can go take settlement proposals back and forth, make recommendations, make proposals. I can get the attorneys together if I want to. All of those things help facilitate the resolution of the case, I hope. I have found, as we have gone along, that even where we are mediating by Zoom, the process involves a lot more than just people attending by Zoom. Oftentimes I have people attending live, and people attending by Zoom, and people attending by audio call. Oftentimes we'll start with everybody attending by Zoom, and then people will say that we need to sit here in a box, you know, waiting for you to come back. Can you just call us and we'll get back together over the phone or what have you, which is fine with me. If people want to do that, it's fine with me. It's a process that I believe calls for a lot of facility. It's a process where the parties and the mediator have to just have a lot of flexibility in doing what they do. I will get, during the course of the mediation, conferences in person. I'll be getting texts from attorneys, we want to meet now, or we're ready, or what have you. I'll be communicating by email. It's a very fluid situation, and it can be simply mediation by Zoom, which is what I use, or it can be a lot more than that. Now, once we get to the point, hopefully, where we have a settlement, the process is a little bit more complicated than it was when everything was live and in person. Back when everything was live and in person, I was and still am very specific at the outset that we do not have a settlement until it has been agreed to the parties and memorialized in writing. It's been agreed to by the parties. In the good old days, and by that I mean prior to January of this year, I would assist the attorneys with creating a document if there's a settlement agreement, which is basically a term sheet. It outlines the essential terms of the settlement. Once everybody agreed on them, the signatures would go on it, and I would declare we have a settlement. Nowadays, that's more difficult to do with people not attending live or people attending by audio or what have you. What I have been doing lately is saying at the outset, we don't have a settlement until it's been memorialized in writing. That writing is going to be an email exchange. One of the attorneys, typically the defense attorney, if we have a settlement that's agreed to, will prepare an email that's in the form of the old term sheet, setting out the essential terms of the settlement. They will send that email to the other side or the other parties, copying me. The other parties will then hit reply all, agreed, or if they have some essential term that's not included in what was sent to them, specify that. And once everybody has agreed, then we have a settlement at that point. It is my personal philosophy that I will not report to a judge that a case is settled until I have it in writing from the attorneys. So that's how the process goes. I think Alan's got a lot of tips for how to make the process a good experience for people. And I'm gonna turn it over to you now, Alan. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can everyone hear me, I hope? If not, tag Eileen. I want to thank Boyd and Beth and Eileen, of course, for allowing me to chip in on this topic. I'm like Boyd, I've been following mediate.com. I think they're one of the ones that send out the most articles about ODR. Everything has an acronym, right? But since March, it's been 6 months, if you can believe it, that we've been really actively doing mediations. It almost replaced live mediations for about 4 months. But I've done probably 3 or 4 dozen by Zoom and or Teams, which I find the two most secure now platforms that mediators and the courts have been using. And I've been doing those from my house. I had to go look for my tie this morning. So yeah, the two things I've learned about my new office is that on Mondays and Fridays is garbage day, and my 4-year-old golden doodle disrupts the process. So we've had to make arrangements for that. And also I've been shocked at how grandchildren can find their way into a Zoom call, which I also have now made some arrangements for. But yeah, so working from home, I know for all of you that are on the phone, no matter what state you're in from, has had the online home experience. So some of those things you can prepare for, obviously, and some of those you just can't. But one of the silver linings of working from home with COVID had been, as both Boyd and Beth have said, the technology is such that it works. You know, before you had the wah delays, you had the 5 or 6 second delay, you had the internet going out. So the technology, first of all, has improved so much. And I saw someone put a question up, how effective is it? And I will say for me too, and I think someone responded that their ratio has been the same. But for me personally, it's been the same in person and online almost. It's not quite as effective, but I haven't felt like we've lost a ton of ground by going online if you follow some of these tips I'm going to suggest. So, but one thing that if you don't take anything else away from what I say, it's absolutely essential and mandatory that in order to do an online mediation, you have a reliable and secure Wi-Fi system. Without that, it's probably not going to work, and you might as well save yourself from some frustration. So you need to make sure that your client or yourself have access to or have the ability to engage in the platform that you choose with, as I said, a secure and reliable Wi-Fi system. When I first started practicing law back in '84, I'm giving away my age, but one of my mentors then said, like everything in litigation, there's a definite correlation between preparation and success. And I have found that in life, and found that, you know, even before we went to this online process, that people who came to mediation prepared and had done the things necessary to educate their client about mediation, and mediators who came prepared and had studied and talked with the lawyers, presented a way better opportunity to have resolution than those mediators or attorneys who came unprepared. So, and you know, as we all know as litigators, each case has its very own personality. Some are real ugly, some are not so ugly, but they all have a personality. So we have to adapt to the personality of the case. And that's so true with online dispute resolution. So to prepare yourself for an online mediation, just psychologically, like Boyd said a second ago, you've got to be flexible, you've got to be patient, and you have to change yourself to the personality of the people that you're dealing with, okay? So psychologically, there's preparation in that. My wife's a counselor. She helps me with patience. I'm not real good with patience, but if you're going to use technology, you're going to have to go into it with the mindset that, hey, something might go wrong, but it's not going to get us off gear, and I'm going to be patient and flexible. So that's how you can kind of prepare yourself emotionally for the process. But to prepare yourself for an online mediation, you have to do it. And so you really have to do a mock mediation. I know when this pandemic first started, Susan Guthrie, who's been out on the forefront of training people in the college and distinguished neutrals and those that had access to her early, her whole thing was stop, get some friends, get some buddies, get some colleagues, and have a fake mediation, and all y'all make a ton of mistakes and figure it out. And it was the best advice I got. So I contacted 2 mediators that are friends of mine. We spent the better part of an afternoon, and we pretended to be hosting, and we learned how ignorant we were about the process. But by doing that, we were, became proficient on the essentials, okay? And some of those essentials are just as simple as, like right now, I don't have all y'all on my screen, but just being able to look someone in the face, you'd be surprised. People put their camera in all kinds of angles. I've seen things I wish I hadn't seen in mediation that I never saw in person. So at the end of the day, though, you have to be cognizant there's a camera, and where's it pointed? There's some on Amazon there you can buy a stand, or people just use books that they haven't read and put your computer on there. But the main thing is to keep the computer at eye level. And then also the lighting, like even today here at my house, different times of the day, the sun comes in, some's out. So you want to put your lighting behind your camera typically. But prepare for that. Find what's best so that you can appear on the screen and be able to present yourself so people, since you can't be in person, they can see you. And then the other main thing with respect to doing as a lawyer your trial run, so to speak, is to know how to use like the sound controls, how to mute yourself. There's a gallery view versus when a person talks, their picture comes up. So you have to go to your view options and just familiarize yourself enough so that you can train your client, okay? Or if you're the mediator, you can answer questions for the participants. So all those things are real important. And you can't prepare your client, obviously, until you prepare yourself. So once you've done that, you need to turn your attention to, well, who's going to be participating in this mediation, and do they know enough to make it worthwhile? And for a litigant, a lot of times a lawsuit is the first time they've ever been in a litigation at all. And it may be the first time they've ever been in a mediation at all. And thirdly, it may be the first time they've ever used an online platform. So you have 3 firsts, and so you can't just assume that's going to work out without preparation. So what you can do is similar to what you did for yourself, is have a test run with your client. Again, make sure that they have a secure Wi-Fi, and that, as Boyd pointed out, the process that they're probably going to do, and explain to them mediation generally, the confidentiality of it, and the ability that it's voluntary, and that it's an opportunity to compromise, and those things that just prepare them generally for mediation, but also then for the process of using these platforms that probably are not going to be familiar to them. With respect to confidentiality, and I know with Zoom, when it first came out, they got a lot of bad press for Zoom bombing. I think that's what they call it, when people would do crazy things or, appear naked or whatever. But it seems like with Zoom, they've fixed a lot of that. I know with I have my own passcode, and then I can only let certain people in. I think their platform is becoming more secure. I know from other mediators that the courts have gotten confidence in it. So because of that, have confidence in it. But you have to tell the clients, look, this is not a place that you can sign in from a coffee shop or from your parents' house or from a living room. You have to explain to them the importance of the confidentiality, or a big component of what we do is lost. And And there's some really good articles that have been written lately, people advocating for online and people against online over this issue of confidentiality. And again, that's another reason why you have the secure Wi-Fi. But anyway, just getting your people familiar enough that they can sign on, put the video on, so it's not just their name, and they can talk, so they know how to work the microphone. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time of your mediation doing things that are just going to frustrate you. So do that ahead of time. You also want to talk to them about the proper attire. You would be amazed at some of the attire I've seen the last 4 or 5 months. So some people aren't doing that, but make sure that in the background, like, where are you? So all those things are important for success. Let me see my notes here. One of the things that's critical is to make sure, as the mediator or as the litigator, that everyone has everyone's cell phone and or email, because if something happens, you need to be able to get in touch with everyone. So I do mine a little different than Boyd, in that I kind of, now I just started doing this in the last month, scheduling Zoom calls at different intervals and letting people go so they don't have to sit there in the breakout rooms. And then I text one side or the other when I'm ready for them to get on a Zoom call, and I can actually leave them in a Zoom meeting with themselves. But everyone's going to do it a little bit different, but the main point there is that you have enough contact with each other outside of the video screen so that I can text you, call you, and we can communicate through the day how we're going to go next, okay? The other thing that's important is eye contact. A lot of people who don't like online mediation say, how can you do that and not be in the room with them? How do you're not seeing the body language. You're not getting the sense and the feel. And true, it's different, but it's really impossible if you don't have good eye contact, if you can't look at the parties in the eye and talk to them about their problem. And that goes hand in hand with listening. And I've been trying to be a little more dramatic, like when you hear someone tell you about their problems or their injuries, you may have to be more exaggerative in your head moves, or purposely put your hand in a way that you know that you're receiving the information well, okay? And that takes practice, again, with your family or friends, to try to see how you look in front of the camera so that the other participants know that you're actually listening and that you're actually looking and that you're paying attention and that you care. So I think that's very important. I also close my tabs, open tabs, and I go into my cell phone and my iPad and turn off my notifications. The Macs have a way you can do a do not disturb during a time frame, and I do it from 30 minutes before a mediation starts to 30 minutes in the afternoon after it's supposed to end, so that I don't get the annoying notifications every time I get an email or phone call. And I do that also on my cell phone. In fact, now I have my cell phone and my iPad on, what is it when we used to fly around in, airplane mode. So yeah, I have it on airplane mode so that, I don't get disturbed. So I think that's important. Also with the muting, I know Eileen had it set up where everyone was muted, but you'd be surprised when that's not the case. And you can also, with Zoom anyway, if you're on mute, if you just press your space bar, you become unmuted for the time that you hold it down. And then when you release it, then you're back on mute. I thought that was a new feature they've added, which I think is helpful. And then screen sharing, it's another thing that you have to practice, but it's awesome. And you can put documents up, you can put pictures up for, trucking cases, death cases I've had where medical records need to be looked at. It's amazing, using Dropbox or some other things. It's just a great way to give me a document and for me to share a document from the other room with the parties. And I just think it's very helpful. But anyway, there's a lot of ways to use the video conferencing, like Boyd said. I've kind of, like I said, developed into more of a hybrid of Zoom with phone, with text, with email. And again, like I said earlier, like every case is being so different, you just kind of have to adapt to that file and have the ability to be open-minded and flexible to how you're going to engage yourself. But those are kind of the big tips. You know, the main buttons to make sure you and your client know how to work are the get on with video, turn on the microphone, mute, and how you're going to view, make sure they can put a gallery view so they're not just looking at one person. And if you just can master that and then go dive in and go ahead and experiment with things, then I think you'll do fine. But yeah, we have an open period here, Eileen, I think, for people to ask questions. I saw a couple things pop up on my screen, but that was kind of the plan today, was to leave 20 or so minutes for you guys to ask questions that you might want of the three of us. I was adding up, Boyd and Beth, the three of us have almost 100 years experience. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Well, before we go into the questions, I did want to highlight to everyone that our panelists did put together a list of resources here, and some of these have already been referred to during their presentations. Boyd has talked about mediate.com, and it's a great resource for you as attorneys to learn about how to mediate online. Claire Fowler's prepared several articles on that and videos, tutorials, and also encourage you to practice and contact your mediator. I think a question for the panelists is, and that might be helpful to our attorneys, is have you offered practice sessions for attorneys and their clients so that they feel comfortable with the process and how you're going to conduct the mediation? And do you walk them through how to caucus and get in and out of the rooms before you go back in? Anyone care to comment on that?
I'll jump in first. Yes, and yes, that you know, it's been interesting because you have all different levels of experience with, say, Zoom as a platform. We're picking on Zoom, but a lot of people like Teams. But whatever platform, there's just a big variety in experience and familiarity. So yeah, my office and me are available to talk ahead of time. And one of the big problems is like Boyd was saying, the documents at the end. DocuSign is the document service I use because it's pretty secure, but you know, it can be difficult in and of itself also. So there's a learning curve there. But before the mediation, I always try to get in touch with all the lawyers on the other side. I send out the Zoom invitation. I invite them to get in touch with their clients first. And if they have any issues, that I'll be happy to get on there with them and explain any technical problems.
I'm also, excuse me, a yes and a yes. I do a lot of domestic mediations, so I certainly offer practice sessions for attorneys and their clients. I'm a little different as far as doing it at different intervals. I find it helpful in that type work, mediation anyway, for all the parties to be part of the process from the beginning. Now, one thing I have found in the domestic area is that smaller sessions, as opposed to, you know, those of you that do domestic mediations for your clients may have found that you go to a mediation. I've had one that lasted till 1 a.m. and we settled, but there are, you know, understand there's some debates about people handling it that long. That was a case where people were from out of state. So the online mediation gives a forum where you can break it up into smaller increments. and cover different issues at different times, if that's beneficial. It goes back to flexibility, but you know, it's a learning process for all of us. And so absolutely, I think most mediators that are doing the online mediation process will help you get ready for that process.
Eileen, this is Boyd. In our handout, there's reference to a 9-minute video tutorial by Claire Fowler styled Introducing Zoom to Your Clients. It's available at mediate.com and could be helpful to attorneys and to clients. I find that if an attorney thinks there's going to be a problem with the client being able to attend by Zoom because of lack of internet access or what have you, which happens, by the way, probably the best thing to do is to encourage, if possible, given all the circumstances, have the client go to the attorney's office, be in a conference room where you know they're going to be able to participate. It also lessens the problems that can be associated with confidentiality and privacy breaches. I have had mediations, unfortunately, where somebody's sitting there talking and I think it's confidential. We've talked about confidentiality, and then all of a sudden somebody walks up behind them, their grandchild or a spouse or whoever, and you go, what are they doing here? How much have they listened to? So having the client come to the attorney's office and be in a conference room can sometimes be a benefit, if possible.
And with regard to confidentiality and privacy, you know, one of the issues that has come up, and I've been to several conferences talking about online mediation, but to ensure that they are confidential is ensuring that there's no recording going on. So in your agreement to mediate before you conduct the online mediation, do you have anything in your agreement that talks about no recording devices, no screenshots, or anything like that? And would you mind sharing that with our attendees today?
Boyd, you want to go first? You want me to go?
I was just going to say that's important. I have a standard letter where I confirm terms of mediation and who attending by Zoom and such as that. And I think it's important that in addition to some language I have about all communications with the mediator being confidential, that if there are going to be participants by Zoom or audio or any other means, that they acknowledge that confidentiality is important, that no one will attend besides them, and that it will not be recorded.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you set up with Zoom, you can take out the option for anyone to record. So you need to make sure you have your settings. Also, if you go to the American Arbitration website, they have guidelines for how to set up your other platforms too, but how to set up the pages such that you have it for security. I changed my engagement letter once we started doing ODR to talk about privacy and confidentiality. And then also I attach Susan Guthrie, again, made it available to us early. It's a really well done 2-page, probably 7 or 8 paragraph explanation of the process. And I attached that to the letter and encourage the parties to send that to their clients. And then like Boyd said, we can also reference them to some things online that have this information available to them also, so that a tutorial, there's a couple of YouTube things that you can get your client to watch that are 5 minutes that are helpful. So all that is really good, I think, to help people get educated.
And I use an engagement letter, though I have noticed on the chats, several people have some other recommendations. There's one here with using DocuSign agreement, that it's not to be recorded, and that's recorded and verbal consent, and then they stop recording. I think I also noticed somebody mentioned, as far as platforms, using Mediation Suite, which is one I have looked at. I think we can all agree that there's a lot of process going on here. But as far as the standard confidentiality, privacy, Susan Guthrie, who we all that are doing this owe a lot to as far as our learning process, has kind of helped us understand that even in those in-person mediations and with the signed agreements, I never really looked to see if anybody was recording from their phone that they had there with them. And so, you know, it's a matter of us setting it up to protect everybody as best we can.
Good points. I will point out too that the American Bar Association dispute resolution section during this period of the pandemic made available for free various podcasts and resources and handouts to assist not only mediators but lawyers as well to become comfortable with online dispute resolution. And there have been several conferences and different programs that have been put on about that. So you can visit the American Bar Association's website. You don't have to be a member to be able to view the free podcasts. And at our the Alabama Center for Dispute Resolution on our homepage, we had links to those as well as in our newsletter that we published back in April. So if you're interested in that, I'd encourage you to visit that. Our panelists have also put together some other resources that you can see, like they've referenced some YouTube videos and clips that might help you as well as your clients prepare and be comfortable for an online mediation experience. So
can I say one thing? I got an inquiry here. I've seen more and more lately where plaintiff attorneys in particular will have their clients with them in a conference room, but the defense side, oftentimes with insurance and adjuster, they'll be both Zoom separate. Rarely have I seen where, and not necessarily, I've had cases too where both the defendants are in one conference room on Zoom and all together, and where the plaintiffs are together. And I just wanted to point that out, that there's, you know, there's no rhyme or reason how that happens. It's just what, if they don't have secure Wi-Fi available, then the lawyers will get them into their office to make sure that they do. Also, sometimes it's just more comfort level to be with your lawyer. And then I've also done some arbitrations by video where it's hybrid, where you have, like I've been with the witness and the court reporter, but everyone else is remote, or the questioner is live. So anyway, I bring that up just because there's no exact formula of how to do it. It's just, you know, depending on the circumstances of that case and what fits everyone's needs.
Alan, I think that's a great point. One of, I think, the qualities that we look for in mediators is their ability to be flexible and to work with the parties. And I think that's excellent. I know that, Beth, you talked about safety in mediation, and I've heard from other mediators, and just want to share this, that as part of what Alan's talking about with the flexibility is, for instance, in a domestic case where there's allegations of domestic violence, where it was able to resolve successfully through online mediation because the alleged victim of the domestic violence was in a conference or at her lawyer's office with her lawyer while, and not in the same room with the alleged perpetrator. So, but they were, with the help of the mediator, they were able to resolve their dispute and settle their case. So I think, you know, we kind of have to see that there are some good things that can come out of online dispute resolution. Panelists, do you have a preference? Do you prefer in-person mediation versus online mediation, or are you kind of neutral, or whatever works, works?
I'm a whatever works, works person. I mean, I have been a proponent of mediation since workers' comp started mediating cases back in the early 90s, and then moved to domestic because I believe everybody loves and hates their spouse just as much as they love and hate their employer. But that's maybe a terrible thing to say, but nonetheless, there are great similarities in all types of mediation. But I think that online mediation has so many benefits if we all take the time to grow and learn the benefits and are flexible. I'm sort of preferring it, especially in the domestic violence realm. I feel safer as a mediator.
Well, anytime anybody wants to get a case resolved rather than go all the way to the mat, I'm happy to accommodate them, whether that's live or, you know, by video. I do think, and I think the early question here was, do you have a loss of success? And really, I don't think it's sizable. I think maybe some of the early months, people weren't familiar and didn't know how to do it. There was more technological problems. We may have dropped off a little bit, but now that there's more efficiency, I don't see a big drop off in getting the cases settled. I'm getting about the same amount, you know, settled. So yeah, I'll do it any way the parties want to do it.
Eileen, this is Boyd. I'll do it similarly. I guess if I had the choice, I would prefer to have people live in front of me. I think it facilitates building rapport in a better fashion, but we do what we all got to do. Let me point out something else. Somebody sent a chat a few minutes ago about printing the resources page. I think it's going to be part of a handout that we're going to send out to Eileen. Am I correct, to all the participants?
Right, Boyd. In the materials that were sent out was the article that you all had prepared, and the resources were included in that. I'm just about to look for it here on my desk without looking like I'm looking for it, but I believe that was included in the handout, as well as the article from Plaintiffs Magazine about how to prepare yourself as a lawyer and your client for mediation. So, but I will also, I just chatted that I'd be happy to send the PowerPoint presentation out as well. So are there any questions from our attendees for our panelists? If you have any, just put them in the chat box. And at this time, I will give our panelists an opportunity for closing remarks if there are no further questions.
Boyd, you want to go?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I guess I have to take away anything from all this. It's be flexible, be willing to learn, and that comes from somebody who, your average 8-year-old knows more about technology than I do. I can tell you that. In fact, I just learned how to make fire about 3 years ago. But, you know, if I can do this, anybody can do it. Keep it simple. Be flexible. Use all the tools that you have in your toolbox, and all will be good.
I would say don't be afraid to ask other people. The three of us have given, I think, on the list of sites and references because we've spent a lot of time learning this process. They are links to places that will give you information without sending you down the rabbit hole. Because if you just Google online mediation, trust me, you can spend hours going here, there, and yonder. There is great information out there for you, but as one of the attorneys used to criticize as far as that I worked for, you know, you can't see the forest for the trees. Well, this is one of those times where it will save you time to focus on the trees and not get lost in the forest.
I just want to thank Beth. I think you came up with this, and Eileen for putting it together, and the bar for providing it. I see we have a bunch of Tennessee people. So, you know, I saw the Titans won the other day. So anyway, y'all just jump in there and get some friends and colleagues to help you do it once. And I think you'll be pleased that you can have a new arsenal to maybe help people do what we all love, and that's get their cases worked out if they can by themselves.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we're so glad that you were able to make time in your schedule to do that. Thank you, Beth, Boyd, and Alan, great information. We have your contact information here on the slides. You can feel free to contact them if you have any questions that you don't want to ask here. We do ask that you give us some feedback, and in the invitation link to the webinar, we did ask you to please complete that, especially if you're an Alabama attorney. We have to make the evaluation available to you. So we welcome your feedback. Let us know how we did, what improvements we can make for future topics. Please visit our website at alabama-adr.org. That's www.alabama-adr.org. That's the Alabama Center for Dispute Resolution's website for future events. We're glad to be a sponsor with the Alabama State Bar and their on-demand CLE program. Very grateful to our panelists, Alan, Beth, and Boyd, for putting this on, and for the Alabama State Bar Dispute Resolution section, who we are working with to promote alternative dispute resolution across the state and provide free webinars for folks. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude our webinar, and thank you all again for joining us.